Hello again, Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games, back with more Relic Knights and the questing knight Delphyne and her cipher Ekhis. Fair skin 09047. So Delphyne is the youngest knight in the original version of the fiction, only 7 cycles or years old. And because of her age, some speculate that her parents found a way to artificially give her a cipher, but this was discounted because most would argue that no sane parent would do something that would put their child in harm's way. And being a knight and having a cipher pretty much acts as a magnet for trouble. Now there's a total Red Riding Hood and White Bad Wolf motif with these two, but I am painting it how I feel like, not going with the officially transcribed color scheme. Okay, now for Ekhis. Pearl White 09100. As a cipher, Ekhis is more or less made out of pure Esper or magical energy, give or take. So, doing him largely with lighting effects. And while Delphyne is the youngest knight, Ekhis is also the largest known cipher. So I've already primed him in white, but this is a metallic white. And I feel helps sell the illusion of being composed of energy. Looks like I missed a bit of flash on his knee there. Just nick that off. And he does have all these ribbons tied to him. He allows Delphyne to do this as a small consolation for the horrors she's stuck facing in an increasingly hostile galaxy. I'm hearing the first edition fiction from Dark Space Calamities being somewhat retconned, but they left it on one hell of a cliffhanger with these two, with the Black Diamond questing knight Codebreaker pointing his gun directly at Delphyne's face and pulling the trigger before cutting away to another scene with Ekhis having been captured for the insane experiments of Leopold Magnus. This is the new resin sculpt, but it seems to be a different type than what was used for Zenaida Harker and some of the other resculpts that have come out recently. It seems to be a little more durable, less brittle. And I have the older plastic sculpts on hand that I will again compare to once I'm wrapped up here. So that's good, and that's the last we'll see of Ekhis for a while. And going back to Delphyne, let's see here. Okay. Imperial Purple 09023, which was just about spent, so I might have to get the spare out. Well, forget just about, it is spent, so set that aside for a minute. Go behind me and reach into my little chest of drawers where I keep my extra paints. And here's the substitute. So, Alien Purple looks to be a pretty close match in the Army Painter Warpaints, so this should work. It needs a little extra shaking to get it mixed up, and it wouldn't hurt to give Delphyne a little extra drawing time on the skin there. So, yeah, that's not too bad. All right. Okay, that's a bit too much paint. So, in terms of the amount of water you need to thin, on a base coat you want just enough to thin the paint out. And she's wobbling quite a bit. I might have to re-glue her to her base or reinforce that because the contact points are just, they're not the best. So I'm going to kind of try to grip her by her cape and her skirt here. While I get this on. Now this part, she has an apron on. So that's why I'm skipping the direct front, the chest here. Well, there she goes, just snapped off, so. Alright, well that sucks. So, A, just gonna pick her up and finish her like this, and B, I'll just get her re-glued off camera, so. That's one of the risks you've got when you've got just a tiny, tiny contact point to work with. So, something you need to be mindful of. So, alright. So, get the purple on. Alright. So, we'll touch up on the elbow here where I nicked it. And I'm going to let that dry while I glue her back onto her base. Okay. I'm going to take a calculated risk here. The base is still kind of curing plate mail metal. Alright. But that just illustrates what can happen when you don't have very good connection points between the model and the base. So, something to be mindful of. Now I'm going around the orb as much as I can here. And this wand is a detail that the original version did not possess. And the purple is still drying. So blonde hair 09257. Get that picked out. You'll notice I'm using the fingers of my offhand to brace the fingers on my, or to brace the hand I'm painting with my dominant. Okay, let that dry and move on. Cross fingers on the base. Alright, the purple's still drying, but I'm going to try moving on. Leather white 09062. Again, this is something of a calculated risk, not only because of the paint that's still wet, but because of, again, the fragility of that one tiny little connection point between her feet and the base. I'm going to start with her petticoat here. And I haven't painted anything on the legs yet because I'm going to give her tights later. just being repulsed by something. Maybe I didn't get enough primer under here. I might have to do a second layer later, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to focus on putting something of a base coat down. So it can be tricky to get a solid coat of primer on when you've got undercuts this severe. Something just to bear in mind. And the apron. Now the belt she's got on will be picked out in another color later. So I'm just concerning myself with what's going to end up white. And now the big one. So this is a solid piece that should not be removed. Helps connect her. So she was in several parts: head and cape, torso, skirt, legs. And the cape helps to connect to the torso. It goes in one specific way. So don't remove that excess. Because not only is it one of the stronger connection points, it also helps to anchor it all to the remainder of the model. Yeah, I think my problem is I didn't get quite enough primer down here underneath, so that's something to watch out for. I'll touch it up off camera, but if it gives me enough grief, I have some brush on primer I can apply to it. I'm being careful not to nick the skirt when I do this. Yeah, I think it is a case of not enough primer, so problem found. Now I'll have to figure out how to solve it later. Be very careful around her head as I get the hood. And just barely using any pressure at all to apply this. And this is an off-white, not a straight white. I feel it looks a little better than doing just a pure white, which I tend to reserve just for lighting effects and eyes and things of that nature. So it's pretty good. I'll do some touch-ups off camera, but I'm off to a strong start. Alright, the second layer on the white helped. But moving on, Marine Teal 09077. But yeah, I think I just didn't get enough primer underneath there, so next time I've got something with this severe an undercut, I will give it a little extra work. So I am giving Delphyne tights, as I said earlier. Okay, hearing bad noises my computer's making, so I need to be mindful of that too. Boy, it looks like I missed part of the calf when I was priming, as that's repulsing the paint. But it's also hard to tell what you're getting when you're using white primer on a white or lightly colored resin model too, so your primer choice matters because white will result in brighter, more vivid colors, black will darken things, gray will mute and neutralize them. And try to suck that teal out of the skirt there. Take a little of that leather white and try to just touch that up real quick, if I can. Okay. Then the bow. This is a new detail. Trying to keep an adequate amount of water on my brush without going overboard on it. Okay. Alright. Switching over to Ekhis. I'm getting his bows in the same color. Just taking my time and being careful. I could do these two as separate videos, but since they're to a certain extent the same group of models, that is my reasoning for doing them both at once. So, getting paranoid about that frame rate drop. I'm still not sure exactly what's causing it either, which just makes my paranoia about it happening all the worse. The previous sculpt of Ekhis actually had bandages on him as well, but these have been omitted on this sculpt. And again, at the end I will compare poses here once everything is all painted up. And they added more bows compared to the previous sculpt, but omitted some details that were there prior. But still largely gives the same effect, a big brute of a wolf, covered in cute little bows, protecting a space wizard based on Little Red Riding Hood, more or less. And the ciphers themselves and their accompanying knights seem to be a sort of antibody created by the universe itself as a response to the dark space calamity. And only the last galaxy had them, at least in time to prevent it from being destroyed like all the others. Alright. Let that dry and move on, but closing in on base coats. Okay. Next, where'd I put it? Oh, fur brown. This is going to be the last base coat. Now the base, I'll be doing something a little different. I won't be doing a base coat and shade like I normally do. So that's going to be done dead last. Alright. Making sure I don't have excessive paint or water in the brush. carefully pick out her belt. Okay. So far, so good on that connection point. But I am using just barely any pressure at all. I am barely touching her with this brush. Okay. Well, and this is still repelling the brown. So, grown, whatever, move on. Try to find a way to deal with it. So it can't be just a lack of primer either, something else is going on. Alright. Other glove. And then again, being very delicate with my pressure here for fear of having a repeat of that whole base fiasco that happened at the start of the video. And the boots. Okay. And that's base coats. Once that's all dried up, I can move on to shading. Okay. Time to shade. Ruddy Leather 09109. Thinning this with 1 part water to 1 part paint. Going over the belt. Gloves. I'm still just barely using any pressure. Still trying to avoid a repeat of that snapping off the base fiasco from earlier. And the boots. Okay. Now once that dries, yeah, that's all I want to get right this minute, I think. So once that dries, I can move on to the next. Next, Blackened Steel 09205. And it looks like that alien purple just kind of has a metallic sheen to it. Huh. Well, carefully get the wand. Again, I'm still trying to avoid hitting the orb in it. And then, make sure I'm not dropping thousands of frames a second. Deep Ocean 09076. this, letting it flow down the leg, using gravity in my favor. Okay. Well, now taking Ekhis, getting his bows. Oh, and any screaming you hear is a horror movie I have on in the other room, specifically Pumpkinhead. Just taking a minute away from that to do this real quick. Seen it 100 times, so there's nothing I particularly need to pause for. Just getting in the spirit of Halloween since it's mid-October when I'm doing this. Can move on once it dries. Okay. Blonde Shadow 09256. Then I'll switch to Ekhis for a little bit. Rainy Gray 09038. Doing this the shade so that some of the light shows through. Avoiding the teeth and claws for now. I'll need a slightly larger brush for this, otherwise it'll take all day. So, trying to avoid the ribbons. Okay, there's a little booger of something in there. Trying for a nice solid coat along the back. Need a little more paint. And still thinning it out with 1 part paint to 1 part, or 1 part water to 1 part paint. should do nicely. Be a little more on the muzzle here. Alright, let's take a look back at Delphyne. And I'll take a risk. Blend and white 09061. Going over that linen white from, or the leather white from earlier, excuse me. Here's where it gets tricky around the hood because I do not want to get the hair. I do want to get the cloth. So, just patience and control. I'm going to try to get the underside first. Now if I nick the purple a little bit, that's fine, because the purple will be shaded in a much darker color than this. Okay, that worked out. I'm just going to leave the skin tone and the purple and a few things on Ekhis. And then I can start highlighting and detailing. Next, yellowed bone 09143. This might take a little longer than I initially thought, but we'll get it done. And just going on claws and teeth. Anything you might hear is just a movie I've got going in the other room that I've seen a million times. I like to have things on as background noise when I work, which is one thing that's thrown me off in doing these videos. And a lot of that has to do with, don't want to get hit with a copyright strike because I've got something on that. Yeah. Okay. Then Nightshade Purple 09022. Just plugged up. Easy to fix with a paper clip. Either I mixed it funny or that alien purple has a metallic sheen to it. Something just to keep in mind, I suppose. But it is a pretty close match to the Imperial Violet I was using before. Or the, whatever it was I was using before. Imperial Violet, I think. Okay, so just carefully. Carefully filling that in. Using as much control and precision as I can. Using a fairly small amount of paint, too. I'll probably, given the fragility of the connection points to the base, have to use a much softer brush for highlighting when I get to that step. Okay. I am going to go ahead and prep a lighting effect, actually, so matte white. And do I want to do this? Well, I guess I'm doing it anyway, so. The placement of jewels on her is one thing that has changed quite a bit. So we'll get the one on her chest. Pull that errant hair out of my brush. And get the jewel in the wand. Okay, if you hear that music and recognize it, well, yes, I am watching the Lost Boys in the other room. As in the vampire movie. Alright. I'm going to let that dry for a bit, but I've just got a couple of shades left and a lighting effect, and then I can detail and highlight. Okay, now Fair Shadow 09046. Face, arms. A little chaos or chaotic red for the inside of Ekhis' mouth. Getting deep tongue there. And new gold 09051. Essence yellow Esper. For the jewel, let's try that again. That got weird. Jewels on the chest and in the wand. There we go. Now, once all that's dried up, I can get the eyes on both of them and start the highlights and details. Okay, matte white. Get some eye details started. Using the same amount of water as a base coat. In other words, just enough to thin the paint. Carefully filling that in. I'm going to try colored eyes again, which is something of a weakness of mine, so. But that needs to dry first. Same thing here. Okay. Alright. And let dry. Alright. Surf Aqua 09078. Matte black. Very carefully give her some pupils. I shouldn't have done that because I still need to give him to Ekhis. There we go. I need that in a minute, but go ahead and start on highlighting Ekhis. So, True Silver 09207. No, not yet. Vampire Red first. And switch to a dry brushing technique. So I'm going to need a ragged feathered brush for this. A smaller one will do. Straight paint, no water. Rub most of it on the paper towel. Okay, making sure I'm actually recording then. Lightly dusty area to be applied. Area to be affected. Oh boy. In this case, the tongue. Then switching brushes freely. Creamy Ivory 09144. He definitely looks feral, but looks more Wile E. Coyote than Big Bad Wolf for some reason. Focusing the highlights on the most readily visible surfaces. Going across any raised edges. Now, True Silver 09207. I'll use one of my bigger ones for this. Okay. Computer's making bad sounds again. Again, as a cipher, Ekhis is made of pure magic, essentially, as for being the word the game uses for it. So, using a metallic color, I feel helps sell the illusion of glowing. I might need a little more of this. Not just for Ekhis, but I've also got Delphine's wand to do. Not bad. Now I'm going to take a little of that pure black again while it's still out. And just pick out his nose for detail. And there we go. Almost got Ekhis done. Now, I think think I just knocked Truce over to do Delphyne. Let's get that brush I did Ekhis's nose with dried out real quick. Okay, that's dry enough to work with. So, carefully getting the wand. I'm insanely nervous right now about how much pressure I apply. Fair highlight 09048. And I am nervous about the amount of pressure I apply just because of that same base snapping issue from earlier. A little paranoia goes a long way when you have something to be paranoid about. Blonde highlight 09258. Ooh. Boy. Going against the raised edges in her hair. Alright. Amethyst purple 09024. Ghost White 09063. Probably using two different brushes on this one. And one of them goes flying. I got no grip today. Alright. Okay. Going across the wrinkles on her apron. Edge here. A little bit of the underside, but that's not something I would normally do, but it is prominent enough to warrant in this case. Let's switch over to a larger one. And I'm gripping by the model itself to help avoid a snap. Going across the edges of the cape here. A little on the other side, not much. Okay, now 09078 Surf Aqua again. And one of the smaller brushes for a start. Carefully highlight the bow. Go a little bigger now. run across the leggings here. Seems like there's a bit of water in there. Let's try to blot that out some more. Eep! Well, I lucked out she didn't break. Okay. That's good enough for her. Highlight Ekhis bows. Again, my focus is on the most readily visible surfaces. Burnt orange 09111. Just gotta pick out the right brush here. Okay. Carefully getting the belt. Boots. Great on frame rate, so far only one dropped. It's been a while since I've had that much luck. Gloves. Okay, there we go. That's the highlights. That was time consuming. And now for something even more time consuming. Getting a smaller brush and matte white. Getting the base. Again, I'm not highlighting or detailing on this one. But this will be time consuming, so I'll only do one of them on camera. So, just base coat of matte white. Going all over the base. Trying to get in the little divots and being very careful around the toes to get this on the base, not on my freshly highlighted model. Now, scenic bases are great, but they shouldn't detract from they shouldn't take more attention than the model will say. Shouldn't detract from the overall presentation. Okay. I've got Delphynes. I'll apply that to Ekhis, and once all dry, I'll wrap up. Okay. Now the most tedious part. Matte black. And again, I'll only do one of them on camera here, because this is going to take me a while. Need my finest brush. I'm going to carefully pick out half the squares in black. Carefully tracing and filling in. Going for a chessboard look. Doing something like this, it's always advisable to do the lighter color first, then the darker. It'll save time and some frustration. That said, it's still careful, meticulous, and tedious work. Now once you get one, this is also easier to figure out what goes where than you think, because once you get one square figured out, it's easy just to do the rest by skipping adjacent square. Gotta watch my breathing because I'm in a very bad habit of holding my breath when I do something like this, and that does not actually help. Makes it worse. Being especially cautious on this one where her feet touch. Okay, I'll apply that to Ekhis, and then there's one last step. Okay, last step, new gold 09051, and almost forgot to clean out that brush. I'm switching to a flat head. Just going to carefully line the base, avoiding touching that checkerboard basing I've done. No. Checkerboard, chessboard. Same board, different games. I'm just barely putting any pressure on her as I grip. So again, I do not want to repeat that whole falling off the base thing earlier. There's a bright metallic yellow. Ekhis. Okay. No, shoot, I kind of nicked that a bit anyway. Alright, well, forget it. Just moving on, wrapping up. It's okay. Alright, there we go. So, compare and contrast. New Ekhis and old Ekhis. So he's gotten slimmer and is in a much more dynamic pose, but he fits on his base better. And Delphyne, well, a little bigger. No, about the same size, but a more dramatic pose. Some details like the jewels on the gloves or the pouch on the belt are gone, but she's picked up the wand. So we go. The youngest Relic Knight, the youngest of the Knights of Relic Knights, and her big bad wolf cipher. Moving back to Malifaux. Until next time, I am Ian Stuckey with Mastermind Games, signing out.